Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Stesha Brandon. I'm a white woman with curly, short brown hair, and I'm wearing a white t-shirt and a green patterned scarf. I'm the Literature and Humanities Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. And on behalf of the library, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's event to celebrate the release of The Future is Disabled. As we begin tonight, I want to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. Here in Seattle, these are the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders, past and present, and thank them for their stewardship of this land. I wanted to take a minute to thank the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation and the Seattle Times for their generous support of library programs. We're also grateful to the Seattle Public Library Foundation. Private gifts to the foundation from thousands of donors help the library provide free programs and services that touch the lives of everyone in our community. I have a couple of quick announcements before we get started. You can find copies of Leah's books at Elliott Bay Book Company's website. We'll post a link in the chat, and or you can go to elliottbaybook.com. I wanted to let folks know that we have closed captioning available tonight. To access the closed captioning, you just go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and you click on the closed captioning icon to enable the captioning. We also have an ASL interpreter tonight, and if you would like to access the ASL interpreter, you can pin that square by hovering your cursor in the upper right corner of the ASL interpreter square, and then you select pin. After tonight's conversation, we'll have time for questions from you. You can ask your questions at any time by writing it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And finally, we're interested in hearing from you. Toward the close of the event, we'll be posting a link to a survey in the chat and would appreciate it if you took a minute after the event to fill it out. Now I'm delighted to introduce tonight's speakers. Leah Lakshmi Peepsna Samarasinghe is a non-binary femme autistic disabled writer, space creator, and disability and transformative justice movement worker of Burgher and Tamil Sri Lankan, Irish, and Galician Roma ascent. They are the author or co-editor of 10 books, including the forthcoming and actually released just today, The Future is Disabled, Prophecies, Love Notes, and Mourning Songs, co-edited with Jairus Dixon, Strategies and Stories from the Transformative Justice Movement, and Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice, a Lambda Award winner who has been shortlisted for the Publishing Triangle 5 times. She is the winner of Lambda's 2020 Jean Cordova Award, honoring a lifetime of work documenting the complexities of queer of color, femme, disabled experience, and a 2020 Disability Futures Fellow. Since 2009, they have been a lead performer with disability justice performance collective Sins Invalid. They are currently at work building Living Altars, the Stacey Park Milburn Liberation Arts Center, a home for disabled QT BIPOC writers. Leah will be talking tonight with Dorian Taylor. Dorian is a transmasculine, middle-aged Black person with physical and cognitive disabilities. They're an abolitionist and activist dedicated to a world that is accessible and cage-free. And Dorian gave us a quote, "Accessibility as an afterthought is the opposite of inclusion." So please help us welcome Leah and Dorian. Now I'm going to spotlight. Hi, everybody.
Hey. Hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here, Stesha. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to start by visually describing myself. I'm Leah. I'm a 40-ish, light brown skin, mixed race Sri Lankan and white, non-binary femme. I have purple and brown curly hair on one side of my head, dark lipstick, and a black t-shirt. And I have this very long, great earring my friend Amira made that has a big Hamza and like a 4-inch red point on the end for protection. And I am so happy to see everyone who's attending. This is the first in the virtual tour for this book, which I'm going to hold up. The Future is Disabled. And Texta, who's here, is the artist who made the artwork that's on the front cover and is my friend and an incredible, incredible disabled, queer, non-binary South Asian artist. Yeah, living in Australia. And I'm just going to describe the front cover of the book. There's this nebula with this kind of sun rays with like orange and red and light blue and dark blue. And there's this sundial where there are these little brown kind of baby embryo features that are making up the clock face. And they're kind of casting a long shadow. And it says the future is disabled. What is the subtitle of my book? Prophecies, Love Notes, and Morning Songs. Yeah, and sorry, is something happening in chat? Let me see. Thanks, is that better? Oh, I hope everything's okay. Yeah, and I just wanted to say before, so I'm gonna read some stuff, and then me and Dorian, who's a dear friend and someone who I work with, are just gonna chop it up and talk. But I just wanted to first say, like, I wrote this book, like, I lived in Seattle till April of this year. And I wrote this book while I was living in South Seattle and Beacon Hill. And a lot of it I wrote during the first 2 years of the pandemic when I was in lockdown in my house and living through a lot of losses and surviving with a lot of the people who are at this event who I'm seeing popping up, who were all disabled folks in Coast Salish territories who were figuring out ways to survive together, right? Like imperfectly and figuring it out. And that's why I really want to like kick off the online tour by just bringing this book to where it started. So thank you for being together in community. Hey, Mackenzie, it's so nice to see you there, and Marcia and everybody. And I also just want to name, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but some of the many things that fueled this book was, as a lot of people know, I lost two people who I was really close to, one of whom lived in Seattle and died there, Lucia Leandro Jimeno. And I just want to dedicate this reading to him. And I know there's so many people in Seattle who love LL and were around for his life and his death in 2021. And LL, I hope you're hanging out with us right now. I love you. Okay, so I'm gonna just read a little bit. And I'm actually gonna just start with some of the quotes that I start this book with. And the first is from Stacy, where she says, "Disability justice dreams got me this far, and I'm gonna keep betting on them." Stacy Park Milburn. And next is a quote by Seattle amazing musician Left at London, and trigger warning for there's a brief mention of self-harm, but it's in a positive way if there's there. It's from her song, This Is a Protest for Your Heart, where she says, "I could cut my wrists up, I could put my fists up. Either way, I can't cheat death. I don't want to live, that's fine, because the years will still go by. I don't want to miss them, I don't want to miss them, I don't want to miss them, not this time." And finally, by Ursula Le Guin, "Hard times are coming when we'll be wanting the voices of writers who can see alternatives to how we live now, can see through our fear-stricken society and its obsessive technologies to other ways of being, and even imagine real grounds for hope. We'll need writers who can remember freedom, poets, visionaries, realists of a larger reality." Writing a disabled future in progress. I believe in the disabled future. This is a radical statement. Disabled people aren't supposed to be alive, take up space, exist joyfully, complicatedly, thrivingly, ornerily in the present. But the future? No, double no. In the bad future of all kinds of dystopian imaginings, disabled people are either everywhere with our pathetic, pain-filled, dysfunctional, broken body minds. We're the quote-unquote tragic, autistic son in Children of Men who can't look up from his devices, the ugly babies produced by toxic waste. We're a cautionary tale. On the other hand, in so much utopian social justice science fiction, It's unquestioned that in the good utopian future, disabled people don't exist. Everyone eats organic, and we're eliminated before birth through genetic selection that no one calls eugenics. In the happy future, we're all dead, and isn't it better that way? Fuck that. Crip bodies were built for space travel. Crip minds already pushed the outer limits. Alice Wong, founder of the Disability Visibility Project, tweeted in 2016. We already master usage of breathing apparatuses and we can handle challenging situations. Wired in 2020 wrote about the buried history of disabled and deaf people selected as some of the first people to be astronaut trainees because deaf people were less likely to get nauseous and use sign to communicate. And because pooping is a major problem in space and it's so much easier when you already have an ostomy bag. Disabled and deaf gain, the brilliance within our divergent body minds helps us take root amongst the stars. As white Jewish queer disabled writer Carrie Kaufman recently wrote, "Where do you, the abled, go when you leave us behind, and is it worth it?" At the core of my work and life is the belief that disabled wisdom is the key to our survival and expansion. Crip genius is what will keep us all alive and bring us home to the just and survivable future we all need if we have a chance in hell of getting there. Community building isn't always seen as real activism, whatever, but the work we do to create disabled Black and Brown community spaces, online forums, hashtags, and artwork is life-saving because it creates space for disabled BIPOC to come out as disabled. I mean big organized spaces, parties, and events, but I also mean the disabled version of, hey, do you want some of my fries? One disabled BIPOC person being friendly and initiating hangout space with another who might not be ready to be out yet. It's very difficult to organize for survival, power, and pleasure when people can't even admit that they go to this school, you know? And I'm gonna pause there. And Dorian, if you wanna come on, I think we're gonna chop it up a little bit. Hi.
Hello, hi.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. I think before I move any further, I should give a description of myself. And I am Dorian. I'm a light-skinned Black trans masculine person. I've got shoulder chin length, dark brown dreadlocks and octagonal shaped glasses. And I have on a button-up plaid shirt. It's blue and brown plaid. Oh, and my background is blurred. Can't see what's behind me. Cool.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's get going.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think you could ask me this, or we could both talk about it. But when I was thinking about questions I wanted to bring to this space, I just was like, what's your thoughts about the disabled future? And what's your thoughts about what it's like to be living disabled and us right now?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a really $10,000 question.
Yeah,
$10
yeah.
million question.
So, what was the first one again?
I mean, what are you thinking about? What kind of disabled future are you trying to create right now? Like,
That's
what's your vision of the disabled future that you
yeah.
want?
Well, there can't be a future unless it's disabled. That to me, a future that doesn't allow disabled people is a non-existent future, and I see that even more so post what we call post-COVID, but it's
Mhm.
no such thing really.
Right,
Yeah, and
right.
so I see that more as more people, you mentioned, are afraid to admit that they're in the space, especially fellow BIPOC folks. So
Mhm.
but we have more people entering the space every day. So
Mhm.
like the first thing that I see is a future where we can exist and don't have to exist in silence. You know?
Yeah.
I see a world where we don't have to hide.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
because we've already been the leaders, but we don't have to be invisible leaders anymore in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that a lot. Yeah. Um, I just want to be like, yeah, that's what I want. I mean, and it's like, I really like what you said about like, just, I'm going to fuck it up, but just the beginning part where you were like, yeah, I mean, there's no future without disabled people in it, which is just like, yeah, like obviously. And then for me, it's also like also, okay, I did the thing, I can actually probably share this. It's like, I did the thing I always do where I make the access document and it's always like, if I read everything I put in it, we'd be here for 3 hours because I'm just like, oh, I want to put that in and put that in. So I'm going to excerpt a little bit. But, you know, one of the things I wrote about was like earlier this year in 2022, Sami Schock, who's the author of Black Disabled History and Body Minds Reimagined, and who's a Black disabled queer academic living in Madison, Wisconsin. This was in like early Omicron, and she tweeted, she's like, well, pretty soon, most of the world's going to be disabled. And people flipped out on her. And like, because she's on Twitter a lot and she's a lot more open on Twitter than I am. And, you know, I commend her bravery because I can't do that shit. Like, I'm about ready to set it all on fire. But like, everyone's like, why would you say something like that? Like, why are you being so depressing? And she's like, it's not depressing, first of all. And second of all, it's just reality. Because she's like, look, it's already probably damn near close to majority disabled. And like with everyone, and this is before, okay, I also have to say with the process of this book, my editors almost killed me because you're supposed to like get it in and then they're like, okay, don't mess with it anymore because we got to proofread it and stuff. And then it has to go to the printer. And up until like July, I was like, I'm sorry, you need to let me edit this bit because it kept changing so fast. Right? Like, and what I mean by this is like in February when I turned in the final draft, I was like, oh yeah, like Omicron, they're saying that like 20% of the United States might get it. Wow, that's wild. And then by July, I was like, well, it's actually 95% got it. So I need to update that statistic. And I say this because I'm like, yeah, so I mean, I just feel like I'm one of the, you know, I mean, I think we both are some of the last people who didn't get COVID yet standing or sitting, which every time NPR is like, what's their secret? I'm like, well, it's disabled people who just didn't leave the house without masks for 3 years is what it is. A lot of them, you know, it's not, they're like, what's the genetic modification? I'm like, we just masked up a lot and have no social lives or what offline. But anyway, I'm rambling, but I guess just being like, yeah, there are more of us than them. And the question is, what now? You know, like, what do we do with that? And what is the world trying to do to us? Because I think at times I was like, great, we'll just take over. And then I was like, oh, especially right now, I'm like, oh, they want to kill us. They really want to kill us. And they're going to do it little bit by little bit. And they're going to do it lying about it and saying that nothing's happening because there's no pandemic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
think that's the danger of like continuing the narrative that there is no pandemic, because I think that it's like one thing I noticed about the pandemic it's that eugenics was already part of our culture, but then it just became normalized in this way that I don't think it had before. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and the way people would talk is essentially like, well, some of you are just going to have to die, which is how I felt by people, you know, when they're like, oh, well, only these people will get it, or only that amount of people will get it. And so, you know, and it's like people were willing to sacrifice a certain amount of population to have what they considered normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt it feels like really dangerous because you know, I think there are normalized parts of like the idea that, you know, disabled people are suffering from, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
existence is being alive is suffering. So then you have
Mm-hmm.
this idea that, you know, only, you know, well, it's only the weak, so to speak, are going to have to die off for the rest of us to like live normally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I forgot where I was going with that, but
Okay, I think you went not to a good place, but to an important place that we have to say.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, so the way, so yeah, I just think that language is very dangerous because a lot of people sorry, I think my dog is getting into something, can't accept, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
they too are that population.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like sometimes I'm a little bit too optimistic, and I was like, "Great, well, I'll be disabled, and there'll be a little bit of an onboarding process, but then we can take over." And then I was like, "Right, remember how long it took you to deal with your internalized ableism, which you're still dealing with?" And I got disabled 26 years ago, you know, and I'm just like, there's that. And I think I just saw someone say, "Wow, it's so great to hear somebody say that." And yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the places in terms of like the future present that we're in now is that there's so much massive gaslighting going on that I feel like as disabled people, like we've been organizing, talking all through the pandemic, but I feel like a lot of us are just kind of like starting to connect now about how stunned we feel about holy shit, like we're the only ones who remember the last 2.5 years. Like what? Like, you know, and what does that mean for how we're going to organize going forward? It was a trip because so I recorded an audiobook for this book and I was able to do it, you know, me recording it instead of a random voice actor, which is great because I don't think they'd be able to deal with this. Hi, Stanley. Oh my God, he's gonna steal the show now. But it was wild reading this out loud because I was like, damn, like this, I'm writing about stuff that happened not that long ago, but it feels like a history lesson. But part of why I'm glad that I wrote this book was that I was like, we need to remember what we did. So I'm going to read a little bit more if that's cool, and then we can jump back in. Okay. Um, White trans science fiction writer Charlie Jane Anders writes in her book, Never Say You Can't Survive, about how being bullied as a trans learning disabled kid, and how the story creation she did to survive led to her career as a science fiction writer. She says, I think there's a thing we naturally do when we're in the middle of hardship and political torment, which is that we retreat into our imaginations. It's no accident that a lot of social justice nerds are into Star Trek. You can also survive when times are hard by making up stories of how they could be different. A lot of the writing I did during the Trump era and the pandemic that's in this book was doing that, surviving by making up stories about how shit could be different, i.e., how disabled people could survive and make something less gross than what we were in. I, in my own halting, cripping way, was groping toward both imagining something audaciously better than the disaster we had and documenting what I was noticing in disability justice movement and community about how we were trying to make it happen. Okay, and people know how I feel about Star Trek Discovery. If you don't, you're about to learn. Like Captain Michael Burnham from the Star Trek Discovery, we were working in less than ideal conditions with crewmates suffering from CPTSD who got into huge fights with each other. Yet, with a ragtag bunch of imperfect people, often in a bad mood, we were still able to fight evil and survive, to do things to fight evil and survive that kept ourselves alive. Because look at what happened in the midst of all the destruction of Trump and the triple pandemic. Mask giveaways in the tens of thousands. Disability justice books, sections of bookstores and libraries, performances, collectives, Instagram feeds, hashtags, online groups, Zoom disabled sex parties and dance parties and STEM parties and hangouts. We, disabled people, saved Medicaid and the ADA. We taught all of North America how to make air purifiers out of box fans and a $20 furnace filter from Lowe's, and how to use masks for smoke and then viruses and what the different kinds were. We got the use of electroshock on autistic youth banned at the Judge Rotenberg Center. We organized massive campaigns like hashtag Power to Live, spreading information about how to make dry ice and use generators to power life-supporting access and medical equipment like ventilators and wheelchairs after power companies without warning cut off power to most of Northern California in an attempt to stop wildfires. And hashtag campaigns like High Risk California to reverse statewide legislation barring Crips from the front of the line for vaccines. We stopped official medical rationing and triage from being a reality, so far. We had care circles even when we were beyond exhausted and overwhelmed with rage and despair. Us, a whole lot of traumatized, pissed off, disabled people who were supposed to be the first people to die, who absolutely refused to be sidelined or forgotten about. Some people might read this book and be confused, like, where's the futurism? Where's the shiny robot arms, the Aspie supremacy fueling the space race, the cure? This is one of the few ways that disabled futures get talked about. Shiny, cool, super crip ones with a lot of fancy technology. But I'm writing a disability justice futurism. where the disability in the future is not about the $40,000 cybernetic arm that doesn't work and nobody who isn't rich can afford anyway, but all the disabled survival strategies, communities, and tech we create by and for ourselves as disabled BIPOC people. We are the ones who know more than anything the technology of how to actually care. Our quote unquote crazy leaps of faith, archiving, caremongering, troubleshooting, crypt dueling a new world into birth. So I guess I wanted to share that. And like this book has just been out for 2 days, but some of the feedback I've gotten is people saying, thank you for writing this shit down and collecting what other people have done so we can help remember what we've done, you know? So yeah, and I want to make sure there's room for Q&A, so we got a little bit of time left. Should I read more or should we chop it up more? Dorian, do you want to come back?
Here I am.
Here you are.
Here
Okay.
we are. Stanley is still making his appearance.
Yeah. Wait, is he on your left? Oh yeah, I just see the ears. I don't know. Do you want to talk? I mean, I feel like we talked about this a little bit. This is a question, this doesn't directly relate to what I just said, but it might be something that we could talk about before I read a little bit. I guess the question I had for both of us is like, how are we holding our disabled grief right now? Like, what does that look like?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Uh,
Grief is I've come to accept grief as like a huge part of my life, you know. And I don't run or metaphorically run from grief anymore. Because I hold space for grief because you know, grief for me tends to come from emotions of positive that are positive, you know, and I have a lot of like grief for the way things could be and the way things should be. It's because I love the world so much. Like as much as I say like things get on my nerves, like I really do love the world and want people to continue to exist and live in a world where we can all thrive and be. And I think that's why I have so much grief. And I try to just like make space for that and have gratitude for the positive I can find in the now.
Sorry, I was just answering an access question in chat. I really appreciate what you said about like, thanks for saying what you did about like the grief of what could be. Yeah, thanks for articulating that. Yeah, because I think a lot of times when I've thought about grief, I've just thought about like all the people we've lost, but because it's, it's not easier, but I'm just like, right, yeah, like these are the people who I loved who aren't here anymore, but then as I'm hearing you say that, I'm like, right, that's right. I'm also in this grief that also has a lot of rage in it, honestly, where I'm just like, God fucking damn it. Like, we don't have that many chances left. Like, can we just get it together? And, some of my grief is also around like, I think you're speaking to this too. So like, tell me if I'm repeating, but like, just around like, especially right now, I'm like, I just feel like I'm in whiplash because I feel like 2020, 2021, it wasn't a picnic at all. It was obviously like we're all like, oh shit, we're afraid to die, but like it was like a high level of like political times, right? Like and I felt a lot of hope actually, where I was like, even when things weren't perfect, like with CHOP in Seattle, with the takeover of Capitol Hill, I didn't feel safe going to it because at the time I was like, oh, even with a mask on, it's so many people outside, maybe I'll get COVID. It was pre-vaccines. But I was still like, wow, people took over 12 square blocks and the police precinct. Like, this is incredible. And just seeing the rebellions that came out of George Floyd's murder and so many, Breonna Taylor, so many people's murders, and the resistance, and like, but the resistance was also mixed up with so much mutual aid and so many people being like, we're going to cook food for each other. We're going to get you a mask. I was just like, right. And now it's 2 years later, and I'm like, my God, we went to the other extreme where I'm just like, it's not like that stuff isn't happening, but it's not happening like that. And I feel like I was actually talking with somebody recently where I was like, and he said this thing where he's like, yeah, I don't It's somebody me and Dorian both know, who I don't know if he wants to be shouted out, but he might be on the Zoom, where he's like, I don't feel like a mass conspiracy of resistance right now. I feel like everyone's kind of like fragmented and is trying to do what they can in their area,
Mhm.
but it doesn't feel like we've got this united front. It doesn't feel like that at all. And part of that is that for me, I do feel like some people who are more privileged, who, were at home on lockdown, were like, oh shit, I guess I'll cook soup for people. And then when, like, when it was all back to normal, they were like, well, I guess I'm just going to go back to my job and not do that anymore.
Yeah.
So you've got that. And I'm just like, okay, but it's this real feeling of like, we could have had it all. Also, with like, I was reading Ed Yong, who's, a writer who writes for The Atlantic about the virus, and he's about to take like a 6 month sabbatical. And he was just like, we could have actually stopped this. And he's like, it's not, we actually can't give it in despair because there's 7 billion people and we can't just all die, But he's like, honestly, it's hard not to feel that way when it's like, yo, just keeping masks on airplanes would have stopped this from mutating. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I I had like mixed feelings about the whole thing. Um
Hmm.
and because when the whole uprising happened, I have to say I was a little bitter.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What the hell took y'all so long,
Mhm.
to see that? And I kind of
Right.
expected like there to be like this momentum and then this trickle, the sort
Hmm.
like, but what I was pleasantly surprised was by the amount of mutual aid. And I do feel like people were checking in on folks more,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and I and that has definitely pulled back a lot. But I think that it's been there has been some like remnants of that I
Hmm.
found in the community. Um,
Hmm.
because I don't live directly in Seattle, and
Hmm. Hmm.
haven't since before the pandemic actually, but just that, in the region. Um,
Hmm.
but I do feel like there has been a lot of effort to try to from some people um to reach out more to disabled folks in the community. I do see some consistency from people that and communities that I didn't before.
Hmm. And yeah, I think me too. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's some non-disabled communities. It's definitely disabled people. I mean, I think that we're holding the weight of it, but we also keep reaching for each other. And that's something that I'm trying to hold on to. And so, okay, I'm going to read a little bit more. And I'm sorry, there was an access question in the chat that I saw that was like, can you share the page numbers? And I cut and pasted it out of a PDF, so I don't have them on me. I'm really sorry. There is a Google Doc with the text in it, which could be shared. But I think maybe it did get shared. Hold on. Let's see. Hold up. Oh, okay, yeah, it looks like Stesha shared it. Is that right? Okay, yes, cool. Thank you. So if you click, um, yes, so I'm just gonna read. And it's about a moment a lot of us may remember. On January 10th, 2022, CDC Director Wachelle Walensky, speaking on Good Morning America, said it was, quote, really encouraging news, end quote, that most people who died of Omicron were living with comorbidities, aka being disabled. These were already people who were very sick, she said, implying that our deaths didn't matter. Her words hit so many disabled people I knew in a place that was already black and blue. I thought I was okay until I started sobbing in the middle of explaining where to get a pulse oximeter to a friend whose 72-year-old mother had just had a direct exposure. Early January 2022 was a really low moment for a lot of disabled people. We were into the third calendar year of the pandemic. We had busted so much ass keeping each other alive, and yet it felt like we were screaming into the void in the face of this matter-of-fact embracing of eugenics. I had no illusions that Biden would be some magic fairy godfather, if only. But I thought there might be some improvement when Trump was out of office. But here we were, a year into the Biden administration, hearing the head of the CDC blandly state that our disabled deaths were both encouraging news and that they did not matter at all. The collective response of the disability sphere was swift. Black disabled activist and writer Imani Barbarin issued a call to arms in her January 8th TikTok video when she said, "I'm livid. And you should be too. Don't let the scientific jargon fool you. The CDC director is encouraged that 75% of the people who died of COVID of the Omicron variant were disabled. What she doesn't tell you is that the majority of those deaths are Indigenous and Latinx people. Also, what she's failing to tell you is that 30 million Americans have 4 or more comorbidities. When we live in a racist, ableist society, who do you think those people are? Those of you who think you're safe, how many variants will it take before you're disabled and therefore disposable? Every single one of you should be livid because we all are being left to die." Barbarin began the hashtag #MyDisabledLifeIsWorthy, which quickly gained ground with thousands of disabled people fearing for our lives, posting our rage, grief, and fear online, and insisting on our right to survive. Disability Visibility Project founder Alice Wong added, "I'm so sick of having to argue that our lives are valuable. And yet, here we are. And yet, here we are. It's disorientating. It's disorienting. On the one hand, disabled people are making more beautiful books, survival hacks, organizing, and communities than maybe ever before. There's a disability section of the New York Times. My publisher has a disability literature section filled with disabled BIPOC writers. Many people, either newly disabled or affected by COVID, are getting hip to disabled organizing and perspective and skills. More people than ever are talking about and practicing access and care and centering disability justice in their organizing and everyday life. And simultaneously, we are in the time of a huge backlash. Eugenics is taken for granted, spoken about offhandedly, as pundits and officials say that we have to, quote, learn to live with the virus and, quote, go back to normal. Many of us can't live with the virus at all, and a quote unquote return to normal means a return to the ableist bullshit that partially receded over the last few years of immune awareness, etc. And I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Walensky weekly apologized and tried to walk back her statement, but nothing really changed in terms of the CDC's failures to center and protect disabled, immune-compromised people. As Mia Mingus wrote in her essay, "You are not entitled to our deaths. We know the state has failed us. We're currently witnessing the pandemic state-sanctioned violence of murder, eugenics, abuse, and bone-chilling neglect in the face of mass suffering, illness, and death. In my and many others' nightmares, this is a final solution, another one for disabled people. All COVID mitigation strategies are thrown out the window so able people can shop, work, and watch football, and we either die or stay within our immune safer bubbles for the rest of our lives. I don't want a future where I never get to have in-person communion with people I love again, where I get harassed for wearing my N95 in the supermarket, and or where most of the people I love are living with even more disability from long COVID with no government support or are dead." Okay, this is depressing, but here's the upswing. When my fear and disabled despair get big, I remember there's still more of us than them. There are more of us all the time. And disabled people are some of the best goddamn people in the world. Our disabled love and all our brilliant collective care and crip ingenuity that we've done before and through the endemic is love work that's not going to go anywhere. We're not going to stop dreaming. Thanks. I know. I'm just like, I have a Scorpio rising, so I always am really, and yeah, Dorian, you're like all Scorpio, right?
So much Scorpio. In
Yeah.
me.
So I'm always just like, well, this is a nice, cheerful little reading, just the truth,
That's how I live.
right? Right.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like question wise, and then like I want to make chat a little bit, and then if there's time I want to read like a little snippet about this section I wrote about disabled pleasure activism because it's important, and then have some minutes for Q&A. I guess just like, what kind of disabled future are you building for yourself right now, like in this moment that we just been naming of like, just like a lot of hard shit and also a lot of disabled strength? Like what are you building for yourself and what are you wanting to be collectively built?
Ooh, these are
I'm
really,
sorry,
yeah, I'm like, I can chew on that for,
right?
um, but Um, I think it is easy, you know, for me to stay in this dark place, but I've actually been feeling a lot of gratitude for
Mhm,
the future. Um, and simply because I actually see a future with myself in it, and that I can, and that's not a place that I have ever been before. I felt like
wow.
when the pandemic was going and folks are like dark, I'm like, oh shit, I want to live. You know, I'm like, there's this virus that can kill me anymore, but now I want to live. Like, damn. But you know,
Yeah.
I truly believe that because um more people are going to see a world where they can't live in it, then more people are going to try to have to figure out a way to survive in it. And so,
Mhm,
and so inevitably, I think, that gives me hope for the future, even if I can't see it,
mhm,
And so,
mhm,
um, like, I just like, I'm not exactly sure what path that will take, but like,
mhm,
you know, um, like I saw a question in the chat about like
mhm,
asking us something about like how we felt about this mutual aid, and I actually do see that in the long term as a good thing as mutual aid becomes um something that people start to talk about regularly, and as people hopefully start to realize that um, like the community, we each other, we're our first responders, and
mhm,
as we can build a world together, we actually don't need all this other stuff, right?
mhm,
Because I'd like to think that if humans can throw rockets to the moon, like we can build a world where we can all exist in it, right?
mhm.
Like I just I feel hopeful that like as these things start to occur, more people are gonna have to figure out a world, how they're gonna live in the world too.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And it makes me think about how I know a lot of people who've been involved in different mutual aid organizing efforts and specifically disabled mutual aid projects. Like there's a quote in the book from Quinn Redwoods, who founded Mask Oakland, that's given away like hundreds of thousands of masks, like, in COVID, but also during the wildfires. And they were on Twitter earlier this year and they were like, you know what? Every inspiring mutual aid project you hear about, we don't got this. We are all so burnt out. Like, and they were just like, we're not set up to run the sewage system or public health with like the three of us, you know? And one thing I thought, and I think a lot of people are grappling with that, and that's part of why some mutual aid stuff is transitioning or struggling. And for me, it's like what you said, Dorian, made me think about it's not like, I think that for me, the response is then not, oh, well, that's all bullshit. See, it didn't work. But to be like, actually, yeah, when you're trying to take on like all of the work that, the government or the state is quote unquote supposed to give you, and it's three of your friends in an air purifier and you're burnt out, it's like, actually, don't throw it out. How do we resource it more? Like, how do we throw in a little bit more? And I think that one thing I've seen from disabled webs of care is that we're all people who are often told, oh, you can't go to an 8-hour meeting. Well, fuck you. There's no place in the movement. But often it's people who are like, I just got 5 minutes of energy a day, but you put it all together. We're able to like really come together when someone has a need and work it out. And I just think about like, if there's a lot of people with a little bit of spoons, can we like put that together more? I also am thinking a lot about like, I mean, I just keep coming back to what you said about we can't predict it. And I'm like, yeah, we couldn't predict any of this. But what we can predict is like we can stay awake to what's happening and be like, okay, here's the conditions right now. What are people dealing with? How do we address that? Knowing there's going to be another, hairpin turn in like 2 months that nobody could have expected. Right. I will say I am thinking a lot about like if the state and the CDC is like, fuck masks, whatever, can we make commitments in our neighborhoods or friendship groups or community groups that we're going to keep doing it? That we're going to keep doing virtual stuff, that we're going to keep protecting each other, that we're going to keep running air purifiers and getting ventilation inside, right? Like, and I mean, that could be like local jurisdiction policy stuff passed, or it could just be like within this movement, we're going to do this because we care about each other, you know? like, and I've been thinking a lot and talking with some other disabled people who live rurally, like you do, about like the ups and downs of living rurally, where you're like, well, it's less dense, and then also it can be really dangerous if you're a disabled BIPOC person, you know? And I don't know. I mean, with Stacey Park Milburn Center, like, which is this writing residency that I want to set up small scale for disabled cutie BIPOC writers, we just put out a survey, and one of the questions was like, do you want it in a city, exurban, small town, country? And everyone's like, not country because militias, but not right in the city either. They're like, we want to be someplace that's like, you can still get delivery and there's black and brown people, but there's some trees, and that you can actually, there's a sidewalk so your wheelchair can get around. And I'm like, right, like, what does it mean if there's a whole lot of like disabled, like exurban, suburban exodus that's going on or stuff like that? And also for those of us who can't leave cities because they're like, my doctor's here, my accessible apartment's here, can we get a commitment from the building not to fuck up? You know, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, these are some things I'm thinking. And before we run out of time, I just want to read a little bit from this disabled pleasure activism thing that I wrote, which is fucking long, but I don't know, I'm trying to like end on also a positive note. So let me just scroll around here. Okay, so it's the section that says hanging out with other disabled queer people of color is my pleasure activism, which is true. My Twitter account's pin post just says wild disabled joy, all caps. We're not supposed to be happy. We're not even supposed to exist. Happy? What the fuck? Who do you think you are? And yet, I'm staring at a photo taken during the I Want to Be With You Everywhere study day at the Whitney Museum. The image description would read, 4 sick and disabled queer, black, and Asian femmes, some wheelchair using, some with facial differences, some chronically ill, all neurodivergent, sit in a room laughing and talking and listening to each other intently. And I think hanging out with other queer disabled BIPOC is my pleasure practice. It's my deepest joy. Quiet as it's kept, disabled people are the best people I know at prioritizing pleasure in our lives. Whether it's my friend who tops me into getting a goddamn massage already, to my friends who are champions of rest and of innovating ways to make bedtime feel fun even when you want to poke your eyes out, you're so sick of it. To my disabled friends who love Disneyland because it's accessible for fat and disabled people, they let you cut the line. And often it's filled with working class families, and a lot of neurodivergent people I know, and folks with inner younger parts love the whimsy. Or people who love hot springs, accessible casinos, all in resorts with a patio. My disabled friends who have Crip game night, including visiting when someone's in a nursing home. Crip book club and audiobooks, to the Crip dance night at I Want to Be With You Everywhere, which had prostheses, chairs, canes, and ear defenders aplenty. I think of the hours I've witnessed other disabled people spend curating our makeup and clothes, and the Crip ravers I've known who just love drugs and budget weeks of low spoon bed rest time to go dancing. We are disabled creative in both how we pursue pleasure and how we Crip pleasure making. Crip sex looks different than abled sex. I think of C.K. Kaufman's recent writing on what disabled sex and sensuality in the pandemic has looked like. It's looked like separating my sensuality from my sexuality and deepening my understanding of the erotic. It looks like developing and nurturing kinky dynamics through long texts, voice memos, and tons of nudes. It looked like breaking up with a lover in spring 2021 when he chose going to the club over my safety and boundaries. And there's a lot, so I'm just gonna like skip over some. It looks like not knowing when I'll be able to cuddle and kiss a precious sweetie, like reading erotica to my friends over the phone, like taking deeper care of myself and upgrading my skincare routine. It has looked like having the space to excavate and feel the depths and effects of sexual violence and trauma in my body and figuring out what's needed for the pain of it all. It looks like moving in a wavy line so the leaves of my tallest houseplant touch and tickle my face when I roll by. And there's a whole lot of stuff in there that I'm not going to have time to read, but I'm just going to skip to the end that says, our Crip pleasure activism is a fist in the face of those who say we only deserve utility. Ensure in an institution basic clothes but not gender euphoria, survival but not pleasure. We create movements and imagine futures from our deepest disabled and neurodivergent erotics, ones full of not just survival, but particular disabled and ND pleasure and joy. The work of imagining a radical disabled future must be guided by the wild disabled joy we're figuring out how to fight for in the present. And it is. Our disabled erotic is powerful. And I was gonna be like, Dorian, let's talk about how we're like doing pleasure activism, but A, that's personal, and B, we got 9 minutes. So, and I know there's probably Q&A, but I just want to say thank y'all. Thank you to Emily Phipps, our incredible ASL interpreter, and Kay Pettigrew, our incredible cart worker. Um, yeah, and if we all want to have a moment of applause, please buy the book. It's in the Seattle Public Library also. Audiobook will be out in like a month. Sandy Ho is going to do a reading guide with discussions. It's going to be out for free in a couple months. So please keep an eye out for that. And Dorian, thank you for like doing this wild shit with me on a work night. I appreciate you so much. You and Stanley. And thanks everybody. Do we want to take a couple questions? I know it's always the 1 hour thing where it's like, you know, how do we do this in 7 minutes? But yeah. Um, I'm looking in a whole bunch. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing, can I pick? Okay, so there's one that says, what are your opinions on co-optive collective aid, now mutual aid by abled people? How can we hold mutual aid organizations accountable to be better, provide more, and not act as quote unquote charity? Yes, thank you for this question. Um, Dorian, do you want to take a stab at that, or should I go for it? I have thoughts.
Yeah, go for it. That's the one I was trying to remember, and I
Yay, and then you sound the chat. Okay, well, I mean, just first of all, anonymous attendee, thank you for saying that because yeah, and yeah, fuck those people. Um, I think, okay, one thing I will say, not to toot the book's horn or whatever, but like I talked about that in the book because I was like, you know, I saw some mutual aids. Like there's one in Toronto called Caremongering that was founded by like Sikh and Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people and who are working class as fuck and disabled or like disabled adjacent. And they had 20,000 people in a Facebook group at the height of it. And they kept throwing down being like, anytime anyone was like, oh, well, do you really need that food or are you scamming? They were like, no, we don't do that. We do not police people. We do not try and accuse anyone of like, oh, you don't really need that. You know, maybe you're scamming. We're like, no, we give people what they need. That's it. And they were continuously naming it. They're like, this is not about charity and this is not about white saviorism or abled saviorism. And they would call it out. And it was a lot of work and they had to bust up a lot of fights and it was exhausting. But and I think the thing that they named, they're like, we're coming to this from our positionality as Indigenous and Sikh people, and our communities have rules around sharing that's not about charity, you know? And so we lean on that and we keep defaulting to that when there's a thing. I don't know. I mean, I always just want to tell people they're wrong as a way of making them accountable, which, you know, may or may not work. But I think that with those groups, I'm like, you know, I would point them at the work. Like, I mean, the term collective care was invented, as far as I know, by disabled people. And like, if you look up Creating Collective Access from 2010, there's a WordPress that's still out there. It was a bunch of us like baby disability justice people in Detroit who were like, yeah, we're disabled people, mostly BIPOC, doing for each other. And we're pushing back against the idea that we can only receive care passively and that we have to be grateful. We're about figuring it out with each other and being active. And I would share that with them. I would really talk about like, so yeah, charity is a problem. You know, it's been a problem. It's paternalistic, it's gatekeeping, and it assumes that we're not agents in our own lives. You know, I mean, I have a thing in the book too. I'm going to be honest. There was a big Seattle mutual aid, you know, early pandemic. And I was, you know, me and Dory, I mean, we were on the same like signal threads of disabled friends just being like, do you need food? Okay, this person's going to the grocery store. And we were all doing care. And I remember reaching out to that group being like, can I get involved? And they're like, oh yeah, we're going to the grocery store to help the immune compromised. And I was like, well, I am the immune compromised. So do you have anything for me? And they just never wrote me back. And I was like, well, that's some BS, you know, like but then I was like, I also think that we can keep organizing our own groups that could be public or just friend groups that are like under the radar and know that that's real is what I think. Dorian, you want to speak to that or?
No, I think that's
good.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have 4 minutes. So I'm seeing this one. I keep hearing from activist podcasts and some community members that we all just need to become farmers and learn how to haul water and sow. But for those of us who are disabled and can't move sometimes without pain, what kind of imagining do you have about disabled folks in the future? It all feels like ableist fan fiction about farming sometimes. I love this question. Dorian, you want to take this one first? Can I talk the last one?
That is, you know, it's true. it is about all about like living like you know, living off the land and like uh and I think about that a lot
Mhm.
because you know, I've just been told by people because I need like plastics and things like that to live that I'm just gonna, you know, just gonna die. But you know, in our existence, it's not like cities are gonna go away. It's not like places that we exist are just gonna fall apart, you know. And if you have
Mhm.
mutual aid, you know, and can work together in communities, like you know, some people are always gonna be in the cities, like, you know, people
Mhm.
there's, you know, in our short lifetimes, they're not gonna crumble to dust, you know. You know, I I you know, I think that I you know, so I can't like really like answer like a like spot on answer that question,
Mhm.
but um I think with creativity and imagination, like there's it's definitely there. I know I'm not going to be like hauling anybody's water, you know, uh,
Right.
yeah, or
Right.
you know, that's not where I see myself, you know. You know, or this idea that like everything like I'm sure I like to camp and be off the grid, but I don't see like this world, this like primitive world that like this the ableist you know, this ableist world where like everything has to go back to like, you know, beating arrows out of rocks and stuff. Like I feel like
Mhm.
this world that they want, that we're like we can't exist in it, but like that that's not going to happen, like you
Yeah, it's not. I mean, especially with like all of us being cripped out. Yeah, I mean, and I just want to say too, like, I mean, I think a lot of that idea is like that you're talking about of like, oh, we all have to go, live this like very DIY, no technology future. I'm like, we don't all have to do that, first of all. And like some people can like be out there farming and then they can bring the food in. But also I want to say there are accessible ways of farming and growing food. Like, I mean, I actually want to shout out, I don't know if they're on this call, but Sweet Hollow Farm, which is my friend Caitlin and Veto's micro farm out in Woodinville. I mean, they're a partially disabled two-person micro farm, and they've talked a lot about like, yeah, I mean, just like, I don't know, we've talked about like
know.
raised bed stuff or like, just like ways to farm where you're not bending over, and during the pandemic where they were like, yeah, we'll bring the food to you. You don't have to come pick up the CSA because we know some people who are disabled are not leaving the house, and they were doing stuff like that. I think about with my friend Stacy with her house, which became a DIY disability justice community center, the DJCC, Disability Justice Culture Club, they just were like, yeah, we want to have all raised beds in the back that are like elevated containers so wheelchair users and people who can't
Yeah.
stoop can grow vegetables, and they were just like, I think a lot of people think that like the back to the land stuff and the survival stuff is like, we all have to do everything on this 1 acre. And it's like, first of all, that's not going to work for most people, including able people. They're going to starve to death. Second of all, you can grow stuff in your backyard in accessible containers, and that's disabled survivalism,
Yeah.
right? And I will shout out real quick, Emmy O'Brien, and I'm forgetting the other author's last name, but it's this new book, Everything for Everybody. And I've got some criticisms of it, but it's basically like this interesting kind of radical sci-fi book that just came out, where the idea is that there's like a huge fascist war in North America and the world, but then people actually like, after things are really bad for a long time, there's a lot of people just like rise up and start fighting back, and then they make this new society. And I really appreciated that like both the authors were like, yeah, no, there's like, factories that make insulin and drugs and hormones for trans people and other people in the future, and it's free.
Right.
And I was like, thank you for that. And that they were like, not everybody has to do everything, but some people specialize in that. Some people specialize in other things. They democratize space travel, where they're like, yeah, there's this amazing space elevator that's going to the moon that anyone can go to because we're just really interested in science of the people. And I was like, see, that's the future I want.
Right.
I want that. And I think a lot of people want that too. Even people who aren't particularly radical pants disabled people, they want to get their insulin. Even if they've never heard of disability justice, they're like, well, I don't want to just die. I want to be able to have my drugs. And
And
I just think about like
possible with like ongoing disabled creativity. How do we crip farming? Like, how do we crip survivorhood?
That's true.
Right?
Now that I think about it in depthly, like I hunt and I go fishing, and I know other like, paraplegics and stuff that go hunting and fishing and camping,
Mhm.
and have figured out ways. And when I got back from my camping trip, it reminded me, I just got a bunch of emails from a bunch of people in the spinal cord community, and it was like, how did you do that? How did you master that?
Right.
Because it's like we pass down that knowledge to each other, right?
Right.
And to the next person and to the next person. So like, that's exactly right. Like, I wouldn't be hauling water, but maybe I would be hunting, and there are ways that we can, do these things together, and then we can teach each other if folks want to learn, because we have to adapt things as they are now. So when
Mhm.
changes, we're already used to that.
Yeah, and maybe just as like a final place to wrap up, and also I saw in the chat that someone was like, "Is it this book?" And it's not, but I just found it. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Um, you know, there's like so like in 2010, I was living in Oakland, California, and Stacy had just moved there a year before that from Fayetteville, North Carolina. And the Fukushima nuclear disaster had happened, right? And it's kind of laughable now. A lot of like Bay Area people were like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get radiation," and I'm like, people in Japan are a lot more at risk, and like, that part of Asia and the Pacific than y'all in Berkeley. But okay, but we started talking like the disabled friends that we had. We started talking about like, okay, if there is a disaster, what do we do? And Stacey said this thing that she since repeated and was really public about, where she's like, yeah, she's like, I'm a power chair user. I have a trach. I use a vent. My plan, if there's, the end of the world, I'm going to lie down on my bed and die because nobody's going to come for me. My battery's going to run out. But we started having these meetings, and I still have the Google Doc where we were like, Apocalypse Nap South Berkeley, where we were like, what if we can plan a way where we don't die as disabled people of color? And I was like, the house we rented, I mean, it was janky, but the weird white lesbian landladies who were never there and never fixed the black mold, they had put a solar system up, and we had a generator. And that was the beginnings of, can we get generators together so that we can re-up your battery, right? And just like knowledge sharing, like who has food, who has water. We had a whole plan where we're like, if communication goes down, we're gonna like meet at this one traffic circle and bury messages for each other at this tree stump. And it's wild because 10 years later, when the apocalypse was a lot more real, when like Pacific Gas and Electric did cut off all the power in NorCal during the wildfires, and Stacy and other people were organizing around like, we figured out generator stuff. We figured out, oh, there's still power in Richmond. If you need to go plug in your battery, go there. And I'm thinking about something that the writer Akemi Nishida wrote about in her new book, Care Justice, about her friends Nick and Alejandra, where Nick had a lot of care needs, and that included power usage. And then when Hurricane Sandy hit, and they were on the 14th floor of a building in Manhattan, all these Crips organized to like walk up and down 14 Crips and allies who and walk, like walkie Crips organized to walk Marine batteries up and down those 14 flights of stairs. And like, we're like, oh, you can go to the fire department and they have power, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is like, yeah, like kind of the nut of it is like, there's a lot of ableism that's like, well, y'all are just going to be dead. But actually, like, we've always been figuring out how to survive. And there's concrete ways we're actually like, no, you're not going to leave us to die. And in fact, you might be coming to us being like, oh shit, the disabled people figured out power. This is great. I'm going to go to your house. And I guess if there's one place I want to end, I want to say we all have the power to figure this stuff out. We don't have to wait for someone else to do it. We can learn from each other, and we can start where we are in figuring out like how to address like the fears and the needs that we're coming up against. And then we can link up with each other, like, because we can't get through this alone. Yeah, how much overtime we are? Oh, 5 minutes, not bad. Um, yeah, I think that might be it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Stesha, for having us. And yeah, it looks like you're about to talk.
Hi, thank you. That was so wonderful. Leah, I might ask you if you can put the last book that you mentioned. I think it was Care Justice. I wasn't able to find it before I needed to come back on. So if you wanted to pop it in the chat for folks. But Anyway, I am so grateful to both of you for such a wonderful talk tonight. And I'm also really grateful to our interpreter, Emily, and our captioner, Kay. I want to let folks in the audience know that you can find copies of Leah's books at Elliott Bay's website. That's elliottbaybook.com. And you can also find Leah's books at the library, of course, as well. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and oh, and you said the audio is coming out in a month or so,
A
right?
month or so, yeah. I actually got sick because I was all alone in this like giant empty audiobook warehouse, but there was still a cold virus, so it like I had to take a week off and it pushed it off a little. But like by November 22nd, and if you go on bookshop.org, which is the indie equivalent alternative to Amazon, there is a link there to pre-order the
Oh, okay.
audiobook, and I think libraries should get it or you could request. Also just going, it was Just Care, not Care Justice, but the link is up there
Okay,
if people
great.
want to check it out. And thanks y'all for this is such a great way to kick this off. Like, thank you so much. And
Oh, well,
Dorian, thank you for being brilliant and just an amazing organizer in person always.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I love you.
Appreciate you. I love you back. You're the best.
well, I just wanted to end by letting folks know I went ahead and posted a link to bookshop.org in the chat, and we also posted a link to the survey in the chat. And so you are welcome to fill that out after the event if you like. And I'll be keeping the Zoom screen open for a few minutes so folks that wanted to grab links from earlier in the conversation can do that. We'll end the event, but you'll be able to still access the chat. I also wanted to mention we had several requests for having folks be able to access the chat as a whole document. And so I am saving the chat and I can send it to attendees. But if you would prefer, what I'll plan on doing is shortening all the contributors' names just to the first name. But if anybody doesn't want their contributions included, I'll put my email in the, oh, let's see. It's hard to type and talk at the same time, I must say.
Yeah.
I'll put my email here in the
Uh-huh.
chat, and folks, if you want to email me, and I can remove that, anything that you don't want shared with the rest of the group. And oh, were you going to say something,
I
Leah?
was just gonna say, like, if I don't know, like, I know often with the chat it saves everything, so I know that there was a situation that some of the panelists were talking about before we came on. If that could get taken out, that'd be great.
Of course,
Great,
absolutely. Yeah, we'll make sure that it's relevant to the discussion
great.
that we were here to see tonight. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll wait till send it till next Friday so people have a chance if they do want to email me.
Mhm.
You have a chance to go ahead and do that. So anyway, yeah, this is such a
Yeah, this
great
is
and
great.
inspiring evening. Yeah, we're
Thank
so
you.
grateful. Oh yeah, thank you. It's just yay, we love you so much at the library.
Oh,
We're so grateful to everybody that made tonight's program possible, and specifically our program partners over at Elliott Bay Book Company and our sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, the Seattle Times, and the Seattle Public Library. And of course, thanks to everybody who joined us tonight. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time. Good night,
yeah.
everybody.
And I just want to say, I talked a lot of shit about Seattle when I lived there, but I miss all of you, and it's really sweet seeing a lot of Seattle and Washington people's names in the chat. I miss all of you, and also people from Wishroonday land and like lots of other places. Just thank you for being who you are and for holding it down.
Yay. I love it.
Yay. All
Love
right.
it. All
Be
right.
good,
Well, good night,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see you
All right.
soon.
Sweet
Bye.
dreams.
Bye.